I never thought I'd end up as a European official. Actually, it was not something. It's not a career you plan. I think by and large it's something that happens to you almost by accident, and then when you're in it you decide it's what you want to do.
Meet one of Brussels' best known civil servants, David O'Sullivan, an Irishman who's been pulling the strings in the EU capital for over 30 years. In this video, the EUobserver goes up close and personal with the chief operator of the European Union's brand new Foreign Affairs wing, the External Action Service, to find out more about the man serving Catherine Ashton at this challenging time for the EU's foreign policy.
I usually get into the office about 8 o'clock in the morning, and it typically consists of meetings with various parts of the organisation, a lot of time spent on the administration. A big project is the new building. We're trying to move into a new building, trying to move 1,500 people into a new building in the space of about 6 to 9 months, which is a challenge. Fascinating project, but full of difficult details, as you can imagine. I'm particularly responsible for relations with Asia, with Africa, and with Central Europe and Central Asia, as well as the European neighbourhood policy. So these are also areas where I take a big interest, even if I'm not able to devote as much of my time at the present time to these things as I would like, and hope I can do more in the future. Occasionally I do travel. I'm accompanying President Van Rompuy, who's on a state visit to China next week, so I will be part of his delegation. I'm accompanying Cathy Ashton to India at the beginning of the month, where she has a big visit. And I do occasional day trips to around the member states as well, to try to stay in touch with our different member state counterparts. I try to relax when I can. I mean, I do a little bit of sport. I'm not much of a sportsman. I play very bad tennis. I do a bit of fitness. I do a bit of yoga. All of this very badly, but it helps me to de-stress a bit. And of course, I've got my family. My eldest son is studying in Trinity in Dublin, studying medicine. Our daughter is just doing her final baccalaureate this year, so I'm sort of half sitting a baccalaureate as well, and so that kind of keeps you sane.
David O'Sullivan studied sociology and economics in Trinity College Dublin before furthering his education at the College of Europe in Bruges. In 1979 he began working for the European Commission. He spent 4 years at the EU delegation in Tokyo, but by the middle of the 80s he was back in Brussels as part of the Delors Commission.
And I was for five years the EU's chief trade negotiator, particularly on the WTO round, which unfortunately I didn't succeed in closing, but also on a number of bilateral negotiations, in particular the free trade agreement with Korea, which was a particular pleasure for me to be able to conclude. We also sorted out some of the trade irritants which had been around for a while. We reached a deal with the Americans on the disagreement over hormone beef, and we managed to solve the long-running banana saga, which had been the source of deep difficulty in European trade policy for nearly the best part of 30 to 40 years. So that was a job I enjoyed enormously. Through that I met Cathy Ashton, who became Trade Commissioner towards the end of that period. She was then appointed as High Representative Vice President, and when she was setting up the External Action Service, I was very pleased to be able to join in this new adventure of setting up this new service, which I think represents a fantastic new opportunity for improving Europe's voice in the world.
But one of the biggest challenges of the EEAS is speaking with one voice and improving the EU's role on the world stage. Catherine Ashton has had to deal with her fair share of criticism since she stepped into the role just over 100 days ago. But does the EU bureaucrat take these criticisms personally?
Well, you do, because you always, most of the time you feel these criticisms are not very fair, and of course all is fair in love and politics, and politicians need fairly thick skins, because any politician I've worked with has had to take his or her fair share of criticism. I think, of course, at the end of the day, it's the member states who decide whether they want to speak with one voice. And there are moments when there are divergences between member states which make it difficult to achieve a common policy. And then, of course, the External Action Service or the High Representative and Vice President have difficulty expressing a common European view if one doesn't exist. But I think you have to look at the underlying trend, which is much more towards common European positions on issues of international importance than the opposite. But, as I say, inevitably, the service and the High Representative Vice President can only express a common position when member states are willing to come to that. And sometimes there are fundamental divergences which make it difficult, if not impossible. We are still focusing on policy now, but it is true that a certain amount of our energy is going into organizing ourselves and getting ourselves structured so that we can work as efficiently as possible. I think Cathy is a very good person to work with. She's a very charming personality, very open, and someone who easily makes friends and brings people around to her way of thinking. She works tremendously hard. I don't see quite as much of her in this job as I did when she was Trade Commissioner, because then, of course, I was her main sort of civil service backup. Here she has different colleagues who travel with her.
While David O'Sullivan serves Europe, EU relations with his native Ireland remain strained. However, the dedicated Europhile is reluctant to blame the EU for the current difficult period.
I think it would be a pity if popular sentiment in Ireland somehow sought to attribute blame to the EU for this. I think the EU transformed Ireland. I think membership of the EU transformed the country, gave us a new confidence across so many ways, whether it was equal opportunities, whether it was just national self-confidence, which grew. And I used to find it amusing when, during the various referenda, some people would say Ireland is losing its national identity in Europe. But Ireland never had a stronger national identity internationally than when it was an active part of the EU. That enhanced our national profile rather than diminished it. Now, there are some difficult discussions, there are some recriminations about the bailout, about the interest rate. All of these are difficult issues, but I think we should never get too far away from the basics, which is that European integration offers a huge potential for all countries to develop more and better than they would have on their own. We're now hitting some difficult moments. I'm sure we'll come through it. It's difficult for many countries, including countries like Greece and Portugal. This is another challenge of European integration of a kind we've seen going back many years. When I joined the Commission in 1979, the EU was pretty much in the doldrums. People had a rather pessimistic view about our future. 40 years later, some 30 years later, we have a single currency, we have a single market, we have fantastic prosperity which has been achieved. We've succeeded successive enlargements, bringing in the new countries frequently coming from totalitarian states into democracy. These are all huge achievements of which Europe can be very proud. Now we have a difficult moment, but I hope that we will not lose sight of the huge benefits which Europe has brought to all our countries. Okay, I have to get back to work now. Take care.